Jenna, it's not black and white. It's not an absolutely we must trade Ben Simmons this summer or an absolutely we must keep him. All right, it would be negligent. It'd be a dereliction of duty not to be putting together favorable trade scenarios and seeing if you can pull them off. Like, that's what the Philadelphia front office should be doing. At the same time, you should be doing your best to work with Ben to improve. Obviously, in the gym with him working on his jumper, as Doc Rivers said they're going to do. But I think he needs to see a sports psychologist. He admitted after the series it was mental. You do not want this to turn into Nick Anderson. Nick Anderson he was never Ben Simmons, but he was a very good player. And he was never the same after he missed those 4 free throws in game 1 of the finals against Houston. And you don't want this to haunt Ben Simmons the rest of his career. So I think you have to do those two things simultaneously. And I think his value is actually fairly high. People still know in the right situation, Ben Simmons can be very valuable. We know all the great things he does, but I think you can build around him if you have 4 shooters around him. The problem is it's hard to have him and a low post scorer like Embiid because one of them has to, in fact, the low post scorer is going to be the one that has to go out on the perimeter because if you don't play Ben near the basket, nobody's going to guard him. And you're playing 4-on-5. So in a situation where they don't have a low post scorer like Embiid, you can build around Simmons. We've seen how effective he's been when Embiid's injured. So I just think this is a fluid thing, and they'd be foolish to make an absolute decision either way at this moment in time.
Yeah, this is all about development. A lot of times when these guys make that jump from college to the pro league, whether it's the NFL, NBA, what we expect is those guys to come in and be right where they're supposed to be. Sometimes you got those guys that make those easy transitions. Sometimes you need to coach. You need to help develop. Ben Simmons is 24 years of age. Now, I know he's been in the league for a couple years, and I know he hasn't progressed the way he should have. But we know what he's capable of doing. He's where he needs to be on the defensive side. On the offensive side, you're not asking him to be Steph Curry or Trae Young or Dame Lillard. What you're asking him to do is just shoot the ball. That's easy work right there, getting in the gym and just shooting the ball. And you're right, there needs to be somebody there helping him with his mindset, because that's what it is when you're afraid to fail in front of people. When you're afraid to fail because you know there's 30,000, 40,000 cheering fans in the arena and a couple million tuning in. I've been there before. I was in Denver, and I had back-to-back 100-catch seasons, Pro Bowl, signed a big deal. And then I get to Miami, and all the pressure of living up to the contract, and then being the number one guy, meaning on the team, in the face of the organization, and I dropped the ball. And then there was a clip here, was a clip there, and then all of a sudden I start getting tight, and I had the worst season of my career. I dropped like 10, 11 balls, and the fans were crushing me. And I would go home, and after a 2-hour practice, and I would do another 2-hour practice, simulated practice, just catching the ball in those, put myself in those situations where I fell in front of people. And I remember just fighting. And then next year I was traded to the Chicago Bears, and I had that breakthrough, and I had the best year of my life. I had 1,500 yards, 14 touchdowns, another all-pro year, Pro Bowl player. So I expect Ben Simmons to do that. I expect Ben Simmons to look himself in the mirror, build his team, put the right people around that's going to challenge his mindset, and is also going to challenge his work ethic to say, you know what, let's get in there and grind and work on this one thing. We just need you to shoot the ball. That's it.
So, and Philly expects that as well, which is why they're not in a rush to trade him when his value has been the lowest. I keep going back to this point, but when you were this close to trading Ben Simmons plus Tybal and probably Maxey and a pick for James Harden, you can't then trade Ben Simmons for C.J. McCollum. And C.J.'s a friend of the show, and we like him, and he's a very good player. But I don't think people say, well, Embiid plus C.J., that's going to win a title. And I think the Sixers believe if they're going to trade Ben, it is going to be for a player of similar stature in the league. Now, I'll tell you the trade that immediately makes both teams far better, but has a 0% chance of happening because of the relationships and because the two teams are competing with each other? Wilds. The trade that immediately makes the Nets better and the Sixers better is Ben for Kyrie. Ben fills in the Nets, like they have a surplus of shooting, ball handling, and a lack of defense. I know they played well in that series. The Sixers need exactly what Ben brings. They have a surplus of defense with Tybalt, Danny Green when he comes back, certainly Embiid. But that trade's not going to happen. But if you're Philly, I think, of course you are listening. But I think you are more than listening. I think you are waiting. I think you are waiting for the next James Harden, meaning the next superstar that all of a sudden's like, don't want to be here. And maybe that'll be Dame. Maybe it's Bradley Beal finally. I don't know who it's going to be. But when that guy makes it known he doesn't want to be wherever he is, here's what's going to happen. Oklahoma City's going to come forward and say, we've got a bunch of 13, 15, 17, and 19-year-olds that you can have on your team one day via draft picks. New Orleans is going to offer the same thing. Philly is going to be able to say, we have an established NBA all-star in Ben Simmons. And we have, by the way, young players in Tybalt and Maxey who have proven things already. Would you rather take the lottery tickets of the draft picks, or would you rather take the established players? But in order for that trade to happen, Wilds, not only does that superstar have to ask out, I also think Ben in the first few weeks of the season has to show a willingness to shoot the basketball that he has not shown at any point in his career. I think he can rebuild his value quickly, but it has to be by doing what so many of us have been imploring him to do for so many years now.
So nobody wants to fail. So I buy the afraid to fail sort of narrative here, Brandon, because I wouldn't want to fail in front of 30,000 people.
Right.
But this is what is necessary for Ben to get over the hump. And the idea that he's in a gym by himself with a shooting guard, with a shooting coach, and that's going to do it, I don't think that's it. I think because either way, if he gets out there and misses his first 3 shots, I feel like that still comes back to him. I don't think his shot is that broken that, unless he decides to change hands, that's going to be the major hump. The major hump is mental and a willingness to shoot. So here's the afraid to fail part, and this is what I think needs to happen in Philadelphia. I think there needs to be a public press conference. Maybe it's on social media. Maybe it's a clutch thing, and the Daryl Morey and Ben Simmons. And you say, you know what? We are launching Trust the Process 2.0. I'm Ben Simmons. I am going to shoot a lot. But here's the thing, guys. I'm going to miss a lot. And I need your support. And you know what Philadelphia would do? Sure. We've already do it. Our whole mantra is trust the process. We understand that we built this very team because we understood that short-term failure leads to long-term success. Want us to do it for a little while? Sure. Every shot that you miss, we'll give you a gosh darn standing ovation if you need it. Because Philadelphia, it's a tough city. The fans are tough, but they're smart. So if you tell them the truth, they will buy it. If you sit here and lie and say, you know what, this is going to be the year. Hey, you know what, next game in the fourth quarter, I'll be more aggressive.
Listen.
People see right through it. You got to be public, be honest, say, I'm going to take a lot of shots, I'm going to miss them. Can you guys support me? The answer from
Brandon,
the
you better
people
not co-sign
yes.
this.
It's a brilliant idea.
You better not co-sign
Listen,
this.
It's a brilliant idea and it will work.
I always tell Nick this. I'm with you when you write. Wilds, sometimes you go a little too far. The wild, weird, and wonderful, that whole block, sometimes you do a little too much. I am with Wilds here. He's absolutely right. That's exactly what Ben has to do.
Can I please
think about this. Hold on, Chris, real quick. Go ahead.
No, this is not a high school in rural Kansas, okay? This is professional basketball in Philadelphia. Now, I like part of your plan, Wilds. What Clutch, or not even Clutch, the Sixers, they need to reach out to the local media, the radio, some of the guys on the sports talk shows, and sell it to them. Say, look, guys, we got to support Ben Simmons. He does all these other things great. He just has a fear of missing shots in front of us. Let's just cheer him on when he misses. Let's support the guy. Let the media do it. Don't behind the scenes, but the Sixers and Ben Simmons cannot look like they're a part of this.
No,
especially Ben. It'll make him look like he's a child.
But you just said, but here's what you said, Chris. You said he needs a sports psychologist, right? That's what you said, right? Because he actually said it was more mental after the series. So the first thing you got to do is you got to confront it. You got to acknowledge it. So that's what Wildes is saying. 80% of sport is mental. So Ben Simmons, listen, I'm not saying hold a press conference, right? I'm not saying that.
No, that's
but
what
I am
Wildes
saying
said.
is,
Yeah.
I know, but he's using his out. Come on, like
he's serious.
Come on. Right. No, he's not serious. But here's the deal. He's right because Ben Simmons has to lean into that. And we hear Giannis. We've been having this debate about Giannis for half the year when he came out and he said, "Don't get too high, don't get too low." And that's what Ben Simmons has to understand. That's why I always lean into that because there's going to be days where you're cooking, and then there's going to be days where you go 3 for 11 like Paul George did. And what does Paul George do? He stay right here. He's been that the whole season, and that's what Ben Simmons has to learn.
Paul George is a great example, and I'm bringing up another example of guys who have had their most public failures turn into the turning point of their career. LeBron. LeBron was humiliated in the end of the 2011 finals, and it was not a physical thing. He got in his own head, too deep in his own head, and he forgot how to be himself. It took that moment on the grandest stage of everyone crushing him to take a guy who was already a two-time MVP and turn him into the player he's been the last decade. That's asking a lot out of Ben. I understand that, Jenna. But we saw Paul George. Everyone, he had the worst. He hit the side of the backboard, and he came back. He came back, Jenna. And so I think it's been done before. I think it's possible. I do think it's possible.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.